COVID-19 has presented the world with challenges never seen in our lifetime. In my 30 years in the sector, there's not been anything like this to hit power grids nor global energy supply and demand markets. The calamity has brought large declines in electricity and conventional fuel use. It has altered use patterns and shifted system loads. COVID-19 has disrupted supply chains, causing bottleneck delays for planned renewable energy projects. It has adversely impacted transportation, storage, use, and fuel availability. In general, COVID-19 has been a major disruptor for the sector. And yet, where disruption presents challenge, there is also opportunity. Before I quickly come to some opportunities that COVID-19 offers the energy sector, please give me a moment to explain what ADB does in the energy sector. ADB partners with its developing member countries, enabling state-of-the-art wind, solar, geothermal, waste-to-energy, carbon capture, utilization and storage, demand-side energy efficiency, and other clean and renewable technologies to prevail. ADB energy sector investments are guided by three principles: sustainability, equitable access, and affordability. These principles also cut across the operational priorities under ADB's current corporate strategy. Yet, most importantly, we work in partnership with our developing member countries to reimagine tomorrow. The latter is so important as we address COVID-19 opportunities. So allow me now to turn attention to just that, COVID-19 opportunities. Despite the very real human, social, and economic pain of the pandemic, there's been opportunity for transformation, novelty, and innovation. Whether we look to McKinsey's 4Rs, rebuild, recover, rethink, reimagine, or the R's of the World Economic Forum, harnessing the fourth industrial revolution, strengthening regional development, revitalizing global cooperation, restoring and developing the health of the environment using sustainable business models, redesigning social contracts, and shaping the economic recovery. Whatever R's we use, it's quite clear that the opportunity for transformative, novel, constructive, and value-added innovation is now. As the result of COVID-19, we have seen rapid acceleration in innovative approaches to carry out utility-scale operations, as well as creating fresh space for more effective and efficient clean energy supplies and solutions. From the power sector perspective, during COVID-19, there's been an increase in drone use, enhancing operations and maintenance of transmission, distribution, and renewable energy, including solar farm assets. Increased use of and momentum in fourth industrial revolution or digital revolution mechanisms, enabling more efficient, effective connectivity and remote operations and learning. From the conventional fuel perspective, COVID-19 has brought increased opportunity to examine closer the benefits of biofuels and bioenergy. In areas constrained by conventional fuel transportation and or storage limitations, biofuels may have been an overlooked renewable resource until the COVID-19 crisis. The crisis has pressed private sector investors to look beyond oil and gas investments to possible higher return investments in renewables. The crisis has pressed sovereigns to examine more closely opportunity for more reliable, clean fuels that enhance energy security, lower emissions, create jobs, grow agro-industry, and advance economic development. The concept of fostering technical innovation to bring faster and more inclusive green growth in Asia and the Pacific region requires public and private sector action, and also transformed approaches to education, including capacity building and TVET, improved public policy and frameworks, novel financial mechanisms, strong research systems and institutions, as well as efficient and effective adaptive real-time learning. With this in mind, let us turn our attention to our expert panel stories on COVID-19, energy sector technical perspectives and opportunities. I look forward to this thought-provoking discussion that will assist ADB in fine-tuning its energy policy and operational priorities, in supporting its developing member countries, and accessing affordable and sustainable clean energy. Thank you for listening. Over to you, Jerry.
Thank you, Kelly, for the scene setter talk. Let's move to the session. And we have 3 panelists, and each one will going to give a 10 minutes talk. And then we invite other 2 panelists to join the discussion. And the first one, let's move to Professor David Chiaramonti. And he is the full professor of the energy system at Polytechnic University of Turin. And he's also chair of the Renewable Energy Consortium for RD, so-called RECORD. And David has been working in many things in different kind of projects in European and also international projects, and involved in the IEA, Bioenergy Task Force. And I'm going to give the floor to David. Please, David.
Thank you, Professor Jan. Good morning, and thanks for the organizer for inviting us. I will quickly address the issue of sustainable, renewable, and recycled carbon fuels in this pandemic era, and particularly on the post-COVID economy and the recovery that is expected. Just a word about the acronym. We're trying to group the advanced biofuels, the recycled carbon fuel, and all the other forms of sustainable fuels like electrical, transport from renewables, and so on, into a single acronym. That's why we're using this term renewable and recycled carbon fuels, because it can group everything all together. Okay. I would start directly with our thesis. We have seen the impact in Europe of the pandemic very, very tough, as you know, and the single European market did not collapse, but was seriously hindered. And in Europe, I'm currently engaged in a group for the Commission working on bioeconomy and circular economy. And so far, our main attention has been on the bio part of this work. What I think is that we should now focus more on the other part of the world, which is economy. These changes are real economy. With real economy, I mean funds that are currently injected into the economy. Sustainable transport fuels are part of this. And there's no competition between decarbonizing and injecting economic resources into the system, but these are rather complementary. And domestic supply chain for food, materials, and energy will be needed. So it's an opportunity, from my point of view, to get 2 results with the same effort. This analysis, which is a first analysis, other will follow. We just published on the Applied Energy Journal, asking ourselves actually what is the impact of this situation on the transport fuel sector. Most of the analysis, at least at the time we started preparing this, were focusing on the grid, on power, on the variable renewable energy issue versus fossil balancing. Not so many addressing the transport fuel. Actually, I don't spend much time on that, but we are all aware that there was a dramatic fall in prices, even negative for other reasons probably. for a short time. Seriously, impact was on the oil sector, which also is a business activity with companies and jobs. So that's something we have to consider. The sector will recover indeed, but for sure there was a hard effect on the world sector with this low oil price. And this will affect also the investment intention of these companies. IEA has done and is still doing. I attended a webinar last week, a very important analysis work. These are some of the analysis. Particularly, you see how road and flights, and even more flights, I would say, transportation was falling in the last months, as one can reasonably expect. A recovery was, I mean, the forecast on recovery was by the end of the year rather positive. What we are observing now is that probably it is happening faster than expected. And then we go to the rebound effect. Here you see the pollutant drops in Wuhan during COVID-19. This was not yet rebound effect observed until February 2020. But on the other side, that's a local pollution. If you look instead at the global one, the carbon dioxide, actually there was no effect on this. And this because you need longer times of lockdown, which are unrealistic from an economic point of view. So actually our climate problem did not reacted in some way to the lockdown, while local pollutants yet. I could show other slides from Italy case. Uh, as regards Europe, we depend by 90% on oil and petroleum products from import. And overall, Europe depends on 58% in 2018. Therefore, the issue of energy security and strategic storage is a very relevant one. And we know there's a huge storage in the transport sector from the energy point of view. So it's indeed worth to reinforce the role of the attention to the energy security issue in Europe. So far, we have mostly focused on the decarbonization aspect, which is indeed important, but security and resilience to shock like this one are important as well. And then I come to what Professor Stiglitz, Nobel in Economy, said recently that is fully in line with our analysis. He explicitly remarked that countries will likely go to shorter supply chains and more emphasis on food and energy self-sufficiency. Well, I see this as an opportunity for these countries from the economic point of view. And that is exactly the case of supply chain for biofuels. We have a huge potential. Here you see the Mediterranean area only, where we have 8.5 million hectares that are being marginalized. This area can be greatly used for biofuel production, and at the same time, this action would support food and feed production through well-designed chains. And we have an ongoing European project on that, targeting aviation fuels. So the potential is there. The main message, and I'm going towards the conclusion of my speech, is that so far the production of transport fuel and the chain that produces this is has always been seen like that, in a very linear way. How we can make this linear biofuel thinking sustainable enough from the greenhouse gas and other point of view. Actually, agriculture doesn't operate that way. It's a multi-year, multi-product framework. And in this framework that suffers from too much fossil and too much chemicals, especially when land is being affected by the climate change, is degrading, bioenergy and biofuels can support more sustainable agriculture. And at the same time, this will highly boost the economy, injecting funds into the real economy. So from linear to circular, and enabling sustainable agriculture. These are the keywords from my view to support this bio area. So summarizing, well-designed biomass value chain, and I remark the term well-designed chains, in the post-COVID-19 economic recovery could bring back carbon to the soil, support the economy, and decarbonize, and make agriculture more sustainable. And there are a number of options to achieve this goal. The large-scale deployment of this chain will strongly depend on policy. This is a highly policy-driven sector, and multiple policies are interacting. So that's a barrier from my point of view, because having complementary policies is always a difficulty. And that is the area we have to work with, and what we're trying to do in Brussels with the Forum on Alternative and Transport Fuels. So concluding, based on the analysis, we believe that the actions foreseen in the post-COVID period and the measures for economic recovery should work on two parallel lines. One, targeting short, medium-term goals that indeed require to assist fuel companies to overcome the collapse of demand. So it means to save jobs and business activities that are really highly affected by COVID, which is not a financial shock, but was a physical shock. And there are many interesting analyses under this view for instance, from McKinsey study departments. But at the same time, in a medium to long-term goals, with actions to be started immediately, we should increase the ambition, promote a higher amount of domestic renewable and low carbon fuels, so to inject economic resource in green domestic supply and conversion chains. This not means to continue to take care of an ambitious program of cooperation also. So the final point is carefully monitor the rebound effect. For instance, the expected shift to private transport from public ones that is reasonably expected, especially in this first month after the pandemic. That is the current result of our analysis that is continuing with new data, and we will present other analysis. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, David. Yes, Yingping is here. I would like to introduce Yingping to we co-chair for the session. And so we move the question a little bit later, and then now we can invite Jim to talking about from another perspective. Jim is the U.S. DOE Bioenergy Technology Officer, Advanced Development and Optimization Program Manager, and also he's Executive Committee Chairperson of the Bioenergy and Technology Collaboration Program under the IEA. I would like to invite Jim, please.
Good day, and thank you for inviting me to present on this topic. Kelly and David have really set the stage quite well for this presentation, but I will talk a little bit more about bioenergy and the opportunities post-COVID. So David showed some slides that were courtesy of the IEA, and this one also is just a slide showing the dramatic impact over the last 120 years of the energy cycle in general, overall energy demand. And for the last 70 years, this has been the largest shock and drop by far. Oil prices have plummeted. We've seen a major supply war going on that I'm sure everyone has observed between Russia and Saudi Arabia. It has been tempered finally. But the bottom line is that all of these impacts have led to a dramatic drop in overall fuel demand in terms of biofuel, as well as, of course, corresponding overall biofuels demand, because the biofuel is often associated with a volumetric target. And for example, in the United States, it's a 10% ethanol target. So the demand has dropped precipitously, over 50% of the capacity in the US, as an example, has been idled for first generation ethanol. So as it was, biofuels had a hard time competing on cost basis, and temporarily at least, the price of ethanol production has been higher actually than oil production. A very strange phenomenon. So it's leading to problems for companies as well as governments. Some might appeal for waivers of these energy obligations or delays in investments as a result. A lot of caution in the marketplace, of course. However, there is some bright side, flexibility, in that some of the ethanol production has been diverted to disinfectant production, but that's a very, very small percentage. So it creates an opportunity as well in terms of how do we do the green recovery. This will require support and policy support, as David outlined. It also might draw attention to the higher focus on local sustainability and local security, a higher focus on regional or local supply chains, and improve the resilience of the local economy. So rather than running away from a green opportunity or biofuels, it's time to consider new opportunities in light of the new day. So just to briefly talk about energy, IEA Bioenergy. IEA Bioenergy is a technology collaboration program, and that keyword collaboration is the essence of what we do and what bioenergy requires to be successful. We're functioning under a framework of the International Energy Agency. And our goal is to produce meaningful scientific information that helps promote the production of environmentally sound, economically stable, and technically efficient bioenergy creation. The work program is designed through various tasks that are designed by the participants. We currently have 26 members, actually, including the European Union, and most recently, China and India have joined. This world map shows a little bit of the breadth. It doesn't show the individual countries filled in, but we're always looking to expand our collaboration as well. Our annual budget contributed by the members is over $2 million, and our direct participation includes over 200 people. So we're focusing on 4 key action areas. First, on a sustainable system for bioenergy supply and the role of bioenergy in decarbonizing the economy. We have a key focus on R&D and innovative technology development. In particular, we want to develop advanced biofuels for mobility and various transportation options. In addition, we want to focus heavily on sustainable supply chains. Bioenergy will not be sustainable in the long run unless they can be developed environmentally friendly and socially acceptable ways. And we want to improve our operational mode of doing business, essentially engaging all relevant stakeholders and expanding our collaboration with emerging and developing economies. And ensuring the optimal use of communication channels is so key. So our activity areas are divided into many different types of activities, starting from the middle of this essentially bullseye. Focus first on biomass supply, and then on various conversion opportunities, whether it be combustion or gasification or liquefaction, for example, or use of the waste or anaerobic digestion of biogas. And then we expand out even more broadly into systems approach. In particular, how do we integrate with the larger grid? And how do we make sure that the bio-based economy is intersecting with the circular economy, creating opportunities? And last but not least, we need to make sure that everything we do is done in a sustainable way, with great concern for greenhouse gas effects, social effects, water, air, and all of the above. In order for bioenergy to be successful, we need great international collaboration and cooperation. So bioenergy, IEA Bioenergy, does not try to do it all. We work with a very broad and ever-expanding network of other international organizations, including the IEA Secretariat itself, IRENA, broadly in the developing world, Mission Innovation and R&D. The BioFuture platform is focused on creating high-level government interest and action across the world. The Global Bioenergy Partnership, as managed by the FAO, are focused on collaboration and sustainability, and making sure that what we do is done in concert with agriculture in a sustainable way. And of course, we need private sector financing, as well as participation, production, and demand. And we need international agencies like the Asia Development Bank and the World Bank to be very active in bioenergy. They're helping create the financial opportunities of bioenergy. With bioenergy, it's also not a topic that is familiar with many people, so communication is the key. We spend an awful lot of energy and time focusing on communication, trying to provide clear and verified information on bioenergy technologies. And we use multiple different media in terms of our approach, websites, webinars, presentations, workshops, and conferences, usually with other organizations. And we have put out many technical reports. And with each technical report, we try to distill it down to the key essential messages and have two-page summaries. And we will use social media like Twitter and LinkedIn to help get the message out. Essentially, communication is absolutely at the forefront of bioenergy being successful, and we invite participation from all the colleagues out there and other international organizations to try to help us become more effective. So with that, I'll pause and thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Jim. Let's wait for a future question, and we move to next speaker, SK Cho. SK is professor of National University of Singapore. He has played many roles, and for example, he's a founder of. Can you hear me?
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? Okay. So the discussion today really is about the trilemma. This is the ordinary folks who keep our buildings safe, especially when folks go back to work. And this is the big question as to whether it's really safe to go back to work. And so there are these three factors. And of course, if you look at this triangle, this is traditionally the way we look at it. Easy to understand how efficiency go along with thermal comfort. Building owners, facility managers, engineers are now so conversant, and they are experts in making sure that the two meets. But the problem is that there is productivity in mind. And here I would say a simple definition of that is really the opposite of fear. It is inversely proportional to fear. So if people go back to work feeling comfortable, assured, knowing that they are not going to be infected or reinfected, then I think the productivity can sail. So here's a question of how we might do that in a simple case that we're going to look at now. Is oops. Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, here we are. So what we know about buildings today is that everybody is taking these precautions. Safe entry is one, contact tracing, social distancing. And then there's, of course, a more complex problem of workplace zoning.
I'm sorry if the screen show is not PowerPoint.
It's not one.
I'm not sure other people.
Okay.
No.
So yeah, so here you see the bullet points that are the usual, and it's basically the status quo today. And in Singapore here, we are really into second phase opening, so people are really going to work next week. And so there's also the work alteration and shifts, which would have impact on reduced occupancy for buildings. And then no cross-contamination. That is where the facility managers and building owners really have to work very hard. And then, of course, there is the indoor air dilution. That would involve purging with fresh air, and occupant behavior check, windows, thermostats, and so on and so forth. So this is basic requirements now for buildings to be occupied. And our latest advisory from our Building and Construction Authority in Singapore, they are the ones who set policies and they are the ones who enforce them, would be to look at how outdoor air fraction could vary from the normal 10-20% all the way to 100% of outdoor air. Hours where flushing and purging before and after occupancies go from the normal 0% purging all the way to the entire night purging. Then, of course, occupant density can vary from as low as 25%, 50%, all the way to full occupancy, which is 100%. And then, of course, the possibility that people will open their windows, and windows can really be fully open, which we consider as 100% open. And then, of course, there are the occupant behavior, and this is a more complex one that would require further studies, and that is where the baseline is today, and how we would be able to set moderate standards of occupant behavior. And then, of course, there will be the more austere measures to come. And if that can be enforced in buildings. Now, I would like to use just these three simple indicators that will be relevant to our discussion later when we see the figures. One, of course, is the energy use intensity. All of us know what that is. It is how much the building consumes divided by the floor area of the building, total floor area. And then, of course, there is the loss of set point probability, which is now set pretty tight, a 0.5 degrees deviation. And that is to say that if there is a high set point probability loss, it would mean that there will be a high proportion of the time in operation of the building that the building would not be able to satisfy the criteria set from baseline. And then, of course, the mean part load ratio, it suggests how the equipment, especially air conditioning, heating equipment, and so on, will be operating. And ideally, we'd like them to operate near the full load and a little away from extreme part load. Now, the preliminary results I like to show here is the outside air factor. And here you can see in the ordinate, we have on the left, the energy utilization index, kilowatt hour per meter square of floor area. And on the right ordinate, we see the loss of set point and also the, what is this? I have to take this out. Loss of set point and the part load ratio on the right, and at the bottom in the x-axis we see the baseline minimum outside air fraction. You can see here immediately that as we increase the minimum air to about 30 to 40%, the loss of set point increases rapidly. And what it means is that occupants in the buildings will increasingly be feeling uncomfortable, especially when we in the tropics, where we cool our buildings all year round, it would mean discomfort and it would mean negative impact on productivity. Here you also see that the part load ratio increasing very rapidly. And of course, it is natural that if we use more and more outside air beyond the normal, then we will see the machines working flat out all the way to maximum capacity. And when we come to air flushing and purging, we did a quick study as to whether if we were to use, as you can see in the x-axis, from baseline to 1.1 plus 1, 2 plus 2, 3 plus 3, 4, 6 plus 6, these numbers suggest that 1 hour before the building starts operating, before people come in, and 1 hour after people leave, and 2 plus 2 simply means 2 hours before and 2 hours after. It has an impact on the EUI. The climb is fairly gradual, and purging is considered to be a positive way of diluting contaminants in the building. Of course, we are not here discussing the kind of contaminants that would be brought in now with increased cleaning, aerosolizing, all kinds of disinfectants in the building. That's something that we have not studied. Okay, this is something to be studied. Now, then of course there is occupant density. You can see here that as the occupant density drops from baseline all the way to 25%, the EUI would also drop. The loss of set point probability will also drop because the building will be able to handle, obviously, as occupants level reduced and also the, of course, conversely, the part load ratio would drop. The equipment would not be called upon to work hard enough to maintain comfort in the building. Now, as to whether this would be positive towards productivity, which is a reduction of the fear factor in people, obviously, if we have fewer people in the building, productivity is expected to go up. And with proper zoning and air cleaning and so on and so forth, I think this would represent a penalty that can be considered for keeping buildings safe. Now, as to window opening rate, this figure shows something which I think we should never attempt. That is to say that we were to move from baseline, and with just even 5, 10%, 20% of window opening, and this would be the kind of human occupant behavior that we need to control. You can see immediately the jump in loss of set point probability, which goes from baseline to 5% to 10%. We don't want to see that happening because it would then go beyond the comfort level of an internal space. So this is something that we do not recommend to be done. Now, so the key findings simply at this stage would be that the outside air fraction will be important. Outside air fraction will be more important than if we were to move with occupant density. These two can go together. And then, of course, there is the air flushing. So the three influence parameters are outside air fraction, occupant density, and air flushing hours. And the window opening when air conditioning is on is really not recommended because that would be really a sacrifice on thermal comfort. And I think it would adversely affect productivity of occupants. Yes, okay, now, so simple case studies of, 2 + 2 hours, air flushing before and after and purging, a 50% occupant density and no window opening. And we see the outside air fraction varies to keep the loss of set point probability smaller than 10%. And a measure to reduce the loss of set point would be to increase the set point temperature. So this is the figure. At the right extreme, right, 3 cases here, this would be the extreme. We do not recommend this. We are now here at 25 degrees C set point. We have a 50% minimum, 60% minimum, and 70% outside air fraction. You can see that there is this inability to keep indoor thermal comfort. Here we see that in the 30%, 40%, 50% minimum outside air fraction, at temperatures reasonably at 23 degrees centigrade and 24 degrees centigrade, we can reasonably be sure that thermal comfort can be maintained and productivity can still be assured. So this is the kind of play that we see, and more studies can go into this. This is currently studies that are now being made here. And so we can say, to sum up some recommendations here, is that when windows are to be open, we need to monitor that very carefully. We do not recommend it when air conditioning is on. And regarding outside air, if the system is not designed to have a dedicated outdoor air system, then we might have to be very careful because the capacity would certainly be inefficient to meet 100% fresh air intake into a normal building. And so facility managers and so on will have to make special adjustments to dampers and so on. If the normal set point temperature in a building is below the 24 degrees centigrade, in our case in Singapore, then it is possible to increase that to 24 degrees centigrade. And then to promote energy saving behavior during this period, more zones would be unoccupied than normal. So we recommend that good habits be inculcated, switching off lights when not in use, turn off all equipment receptacle powers and switches and so on, to make sure that we can reduce energy consumption in the building. And areas that are not being used, like seminar rooms and meeting rooms and so on, should be locked and entry not allowed. Here we have energy saving measures that relate to occupant behavior improvement. You can see that these are the bullet points that one can, these could be levers that one can operate. I will have to move fairly quickly to the final slide here, which is a bit of the engineering focus right now. If we're looking at in a building, a typical large building, reducing solar transmission is one way to go to reduce heat coming into the building. We can do that, and we can look at increasing building envelope thermal performance. Secondly, we can reduce the temperature lift of chillers, and by increasing the ventilation flow rate, there we can also increase the indoor set point. We can reduce fresh air sensible heat load by increasing fresh air treatments. Okay, dedicated fresh air treatment. This will be relevant to future design of buildings and retrofits. Human interference can be much reduced if we were to increase smart machine intervention and reduce the loss of probability that load is not met by increasing the set point temperature. And then we can reduce energy consumption and increase the renewable energy capture. So in so doing, we hope that the dilemma or trilemma can be more easily overcome. Thank you very much. Over to you, Jerry.
Thank you. That's okay. It's very interesting. It's very, very technical study, detailed study. And we have two other panelists. This was not originally listed as the presentation, but I would like to invite them to, if we have something short, maybe 3-5 minutes to talk. Who want to first? Anish or Graham? Yeah. So it's Anish, if you want to.
Yeah. Should I start?
Yeah.
Yeah, good day, everyone. Thank you for providing me this opportunity to present. Coronavirus pandemic has taken the entire world by the tailspin as it has affected the economic activity throughout the world. India is no different. We have been immensely affected by this pandemic. As communities going under lockdown, industrial activity is shut except a few industries which are earmarked as essential services. Commercial complexes are shut. So the pan-India peak demand has reduced by about 25% on a megawatt basis, while in energy terms, the reduction has been to the tune of 15 to 20%. Though off late, with the increase in temperature of the weather, the energy consumption has increased a bit, but by and large, the economic activity is still down. While the GDP of 5.7% growth, which we had last year, is now expected to be 0 to 2.5% this year. So in a way, we are also immensely affected. But I'm of the opinion that this also provides us an opportunity to scale up our efforts on the renewable front and in the energy efficiency. IEA estimate suggests that 33% of the CO2 reduction comes from renewables, while 38% of the CO2 reductions could be through energy efficiency measures. So we should go for these two measures by a huge measure. 3 gigawatt of solar capacity is under installation in India. It runs the risk of getting delayed, but that cannot be helped. I mean, it will come up, but maybe slightly later on. The renewables enjoy a status of must run in our country. And due to this, the proportion of renewables in the lockdown period has increased from about 8% to 10%, whereas the thermal power generation through coal has come down. So in effect, it gives us an opportunity to scale these two operations. Various measures have been taken by the government for rejuvenating the distribution sector, which has been hardest hit by this slowdown. The commercial industrial categories constitute about 50% of the power consumption in India, while the rest is made up by agricultural, institutional, agricultural, and other categories. Now we have a typical phenomena here where industrial and commercial cross-subsidize others. Now this has been a double whammy for the distribution companies. While commercial industrial pay much above the average cost of supply, and these in turn subsidize agriculture and domestic consumers, the reduction in power consumption by C&I consumers led to a fall in revenues of the distribution companies. which has to be compensated through other means. So government has come up with a stimulus package of about 12 billion US dollars, in which soft loans, easy loans will be given to the distribution companies. I think this is also an opportunity to reduce the losses and inefficiencies in other sectors, which currently plague the Indian person. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anish. It's great to be able to build on the remarks that you made about the power sector, because what I would like to do is just take a few minutes to introduce everyone to a new tool that we're developing to amplify and accelerate the capacity building and technical assistance offerings on integrating clean power into power systems. And we really only need to look at what we've heard today, both in this session and in the plenary session, to see why this would be relevant. We know it's a critical time in the energy transition. We already knew that we weren't moving nearly fast enough. And now COVID-19 has complicated the picture further. We learned from Fatih Birol today that global energy investment has declined by 20% in 2020. Although fortunately renewables have fared better than other sectors, but still you can see this as a serious impact, but you can also see it as an opportunity, because things like the stimulus package that Anish just mentioned, and I know the activities that the ADB is planning on stimulus for the recovery, create an opportunity to really focus on greening the power sector. But we know that in order to do that, a lot of things have to happen by a lot of different players. So we know that that transitioning to clean power is possible, and we know it can be cost effective, and it can be done without sacrificing reliability. We have a good many examples from around the world where that transition is underway. But one of the reasons that it's not happening quickly enough is that it's new, and the people engaged in the work simply haven't done it before. And just think about the number of people who have to be involved. It's policymakers, regulators, power system operators, distribution utilities, clean power investors, project developers, and of course, civil society that should be helping to give everybody a push. That's a lot of people to engage in order to enable the clean power transition. Now, the way that this has been enabled in the past has been primarily through capacity building and technical assistance. But one of the problems is that those experts, expert organizations can't travel as a result of the COVID-19, and perhaps they shouldn't travel as much because of the emissions associated with that kind of travel. So we see this as a tremendous opportunity to create new tools for knowledge transfer, and not just knowledge in the sense of academic knowledge and studying, but very practical knowledge about enabling people to do the things they need to do to actually get more power in power systems. So the Clean Power Hub is a new tool that's being funded by the Children's Investment Fund Foundation and my company, Propel Clean Energy Partners, in conjunction with National Renewable Energy Lab and Imperial College, is and hopefully many partners from viewers of this webinar and others. We are seeking to develop the hub to accelerate the human and institutional capacity needed to integrate more clean power into power systems. So how do we plan to do this, and how is it different than other websites or available knowledge resources? So first of all, we all know that there are many existing analyses, reports, webinars, and models available. The slow pace of progress certainly isn't because we don't have enough publications available for people to read. In fact, it's hard to keep up, right? But as a user, or even as a technical assistance provider, organizing these materials into clear tasks or steps to be followed is not easy. So what we're trying to do is organize and present existing expert resources in new ways in an effort to help on-the-ground practitioners find the resources they need as quickly as possible, and to help the capacity building and technical assistance professionals reach and serve those on-the-ground practitioners more cost effectively. Now, we fully realize the Clean Power Hub cannot replace those capacity building and technical assistance professionals, and nor would we want to do that. Our intention is to augment and amplify the marketing and the reach of those experts' critically important work. We hope that capacity building and technical assistance professionals will consider the Clean Power Hub as a new tool to reach, serve, and work with in-country practitioners. And we hope that the users, potential users of the hub, will provide us with the feedback so that together between those technical assistance providers and potential users, you might partner with us in providing feedback as we build the hub, providing resources for the hub, and aiding in the hub's broader dissemination. So if you're interested in doing that, you have two ways of helping us. One is to attend the side event on Thursday evening at 8 p.m. We'd love to see you there. We have about 173 participants signed up today. I hope we'll have more. If you can't make that side event, go to cleanpowerhub.net. That's cleanpowerhub.net, and you can sign up. And we hope that this will be a great tool to help us navigate not just the COVID crisis that we have now, but perhaps identify a new means for more efficient technical assistance and practical knowledge transfer going forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Graham. And I would like to ask Yingqing if you want to say something.
Yes, thank you, Jerry, and thank you all our panelists for sharing your expertise in this session. I apologize for being late. I basically missed David's presentation. I'll catch up later and reading your slides. But I was able to follow the other presenters. Very, very interesting. I think this purpose of this session is to look at the impact of COVID on energy systems. This session is more from technical point of view. From the case of India, we realize that renewable energy is doing well in the system. Well, when the demand is low, the conventional power is not doing well. It's consistent actually with other markets. And also this Graham's tool, I would like to actually sign up. You have one more participant Thursday evening, I hope, to see and read I'm quite fascinated with the way you describe, but I want to see and read more to understand better and see how this would help us and help our clients as well. So looking forward to that. The COVID impact, if I look at from my point of view, I think that maybe 2-3 sectors have suffered more than others. One is obviously transport. As Jim's presentation and actually David's presentation mentioned this, how the transport sector would be suffering. So the energy demand that's supply and demand, so servicing those sectors would suffer. So I think there's a big challenge, but also opportunities. Look at the way how the transport sector is organized, restructured, reorganized, and how the cleaner fuel can make better use of this opportunity to have a higher share. And this is a very difficult area, but maybe this opportunity. So I'm very interested to read, to learn the progress and the opportunities at this difficult time, in fact. On the SK, Professor Chu's presentation, actually, I was, again, fascinated in a way that we are planning, ADB is planning, doing practical pilots of how we would run public centralized air conditioner in the public building. For example, like ADB building. Today, I'm basically alone here. Most of our colleagues are away from the building. So the day we come back to work, what would be the operational patterns, models, schemes that should be applied in this case? And what kind of advice we can give to building operators, considering, first of all, the hygiene requirement standards, but also considering how we continue to optimizing the energy efficiency side. So, and that's a very relevant presentation for us. And again, also I want to learn a bit more on that side, but also on the application side, how we can translate that into kind of practical handbook for operators of the system. So that's what we think we should support. And that said, I would also like to, taking chance of this co-moderator, ask my friend Jerry's view from you, what you see from Sweden being a different kind of model as well. What you see the impact of COVID-19 on this energy sector, from your own research, but also from the number of publications, submissions, manuscripts you receive. What kind of tendency in research work? What would be the trend for energy sector for as far as you see? Jerry.
Yes. I think we open the discussion and because we have the panel discussion and we have received few questions. Maybe we first, or if I answer Yunxin's question, or rather, I have
question.
Yeah, maybe we can first, because we have audience, they raise some questions. I post into our chat into different people. They ask for different people, and there are two questions to SK. And can you say your chat? One is the question of for the purging of the building, commercial building, is the scientific studies, how effective they are. It has been reported in some that the virus can be active for a prolonged period. And another question is even more technical. Most the air conditioning systems are not designed for fresh intake, as Yunping you mentioned. The level of needed. What evaluation of the UADI? The infection system has been done to improve the quality of air, given the SARS-CoV-2 virus is vulnerable to the UVC and can be active within the 6 seconds. So that's very technical regarding the. And so maybe you can start to give some answer to those questions. And there's
you want me to start now? Do you want me to start now, Jerry?
Yes,
well,
please.
Okay. These are really serious questions, Jerry. Over here, the community, we are all coming together to find out really what should be done. And like I said, how to reduce the fear, factor of people going back to work. There isn't, right now, unfortunately, there isn't one single source that can tell us exactly how effective purging is all about. We know that purging is diluting, a hope to dilute air or contaminants in the building. And so therefore, the push to bring in more fresh air, to purge even before people come into the building, and when people leave and so on, that seemed to be the way to go. But the problem now is that we know, and this is really fresh, nobody has done any serious studies about all the disinfectant, the aerosolizing of these disinfectants that remain in the buildings. How do we push? How much do we push to get them out of the building? The second problem is that we know that many buildings just don't have the capacity to raise outdoor air, fresh air into the building. It requires some physical engineering works to be done and something to do with the fan and so on and so forth to make sure that we can bring enough air to come in to purge. And don't forget, purging means recirculating a lot of air. There will obviously be a lot of turbulence in the buildings, and therefore contaminants can be recirculated from areas that are sensitive to areas that probably are not occupied by people. And that's the reason why I said earlier that we should lock away rooms that are not in use in the building. Unused meeting rooms, unused storerooms, unused all kinds of pantries and so on. Nobody should go there when no one is there. So that even when you do purging, the contaminants don't go there. And then to your other part of the question, which is more difficult, the so-called systems that are more technical, the efficacies of UVGI against a range of microbes has been demonstrated, which have been found. If we were to apply, say, UV radiation to inactivate viruses and so on, the question is, okay, how much time, how long do we need to take to disinfect or to kill viruses? And that the effectiveness of this technology depends on many factors, on the system design and operation. And also there are all these infrastructure related development that needs to come together with applying these more sophisticated system. Of course, there will be all these HEPA filters and regular cleaning and so on and so forth. Again, it requires a new regime of making safe cleaning and re-cleaning again. Okay, so your question really I do not know how to answer, but they are supposed to be effective, but it will require new regimes. Thank you.
Thank you, SK. And we have more questions to Jim. It's from your perspective of the IEAs, given low oil demand and the price, post-COVID-19 setting, and how is bioenergy tech has come in the agriculture sector. Will it be possible to bioenergy take the role of being permanent fuel to use in the industry, while conventional fuel will just be used as a transition purpose until they are phased out entirely? Jim?
Thanks for the question, Jerry. Biofuels have a difficult time competing on a cost basis. So it may be that biofuels will need to be used more selectively in areas that is more difficult for, say, electrification to compete. Say, medium duty, heavy duty transport, possibly marine, and in particular aviation. So though biofuels development have come a long way and the technologies are always being improved, we're working on creating efficiencies and reducing costs. As in terms of phasing out oil-based fuels in favor of biofuels, we of course support that, but it is a very difficult technical and financial challenge. So we think biofuels will have to be used more selectively in these important markets, but perhaps will not be able to become the dominant fuel in the light duty markets, to put it simply, in the near term. In the longer term, we hope that there's a pathway for all of these sustainable transportation technologies. So electrification in combination with biofuels and hybrids, as well as eventually hydrogen and fuel cell vehicles. There's an opportunity for all of these to play together in a very synergistic way. And much of that is yet to be explored in terms of optimizing how these systems can cooperate and coexist. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And there are more questions about same direction really under the new norm is really going renewable, meaning should really cause less effect on climate change from among many renewables. What would you recommend for the Philippines environment? Okay, I guess that's to the Yunqi, you are in Philippines or other people.
Well, I would just, Yongping, if you'd like to take it, you should. But I would just say, if you think about the Philippines and Indonesia and the numerous islands, many of which are running diesel gen sets with costly fuel, even with the lower prices today, very dirty, affecting air quality. very inefficient, impacting climate change. It's a tremendous opportunity for renewables. If the islands are big enough, you can have enough diversified resources. You don't have to think about storage. Of course, islands are kind of the ultimate test case for implementing renewables, but you can look at some tremendous examples around the world. In the US state of Hawaii, they've made tremendous progress on the Big Island in Hawaii with Hawaii Electric Power. There are examples in the Caribbean. So they're for individual islands, which might be the most difficult case, there's still opportunity for cost-effective solutions. But of course, for larger stretches of territory, then you get into things like the investment that's needed for the grid infrastructure, which, you know, I guess what I would emphasize is it really needs to be viewed as a system problem, not just as get more renewables. It's renewables, it's transmission, it's operations, it's forecasting, it's all of the pieces together that has to work. But again, this has been done, and it's been done cost effectively. Sorry, Yongping.
Thank you, Graham. You simplified my task. I can actually add a little bit from my perspective on this issue. One, I was saying that Anish has presented the case of India, that renewable energy emerged as winner when the demand is down, given this current situation. That's very true in many mature markets. But at the same time, I also said in some interviews in some other forums that in case that there are ongoing construction work of renewable energy projects, solar projects, for example, in smaller countries, in remote areas, in island states and in Pacific, for example. In fact, this construction work has been suspended largely. And also those companies was running microgrid, solar-based microgrid system, and those companies having big problem of cash flow, they cannot collect revenues. In fact, the demand is down also. So in these cases, in developing countries, in remote areas, renewable energy, when they are under construction or they are remote by nature, they are suffering. They're suffering. So I think that the answer to this, I have two part of reflection, not suggestion. I think there's no magic solution. One is that ADB as development bank should consider and support more and more. When we say supporting renewable energy, it's not just supporting buying solar panels and installing them in some place. And that's, of course, we continue as we can. At the same time, the solar value chain is quite long, actually. We should consider that in some situations, we should support some part of the local content as much as possible. In India, we can do much more, this local content, in terms of local manufacturing of renewable equipment, spare parts, and so on. And also skills. So I think depending on level of country, these countries can be supported in getting involved in part of the value chain, making renewable energy really domestic, so that they can have the maximum benefit of this. That said, I also think that renewable energy, intermittent renewable energy, is not the 100% the answer. We need to integrate many solutions at the same time. Distributed system, local content, local skills, that's good. We should support. At the same time, we should also consider in different situations, we should have a default supplier. This default supply could be national grid operator. This grid supply could be a private operator of some service provider. So we need to be innovative in developing both the technology side that will suit the situation, but also on business model side, that combination of technology plus a business model, we should aim at ensuring a reliable energy supply in all situations. This pandemic has shown that's how is it important, how it is important to have internet connections, but without power, you don't have internet. So it's a very, very important to have this electricity supply being 100% reliable, and that is renewable energy plus storage plus grid power plus a default supplier that may be a private sector. So I think we should bring all this together to make sure these things happen all the time. There's no one single bullet shot. There should be a combination of technology mix and also a suitable business model. So that applies to many places, but I think Philippines is better placed compared to some situation I just mentioned. I think Philippines has a quite decent manufacturing base. At least there is history of this. So and very good human resource base. And Philippines can be actually taking advantage of situation moving forward beyond just importing solar panels. So some local content would be very helpful. That's my view. And I want to add that in some countries like Philippines, although we all kind of complain that the electricity tariff is high, it's expensive. But because of that, and there's a room for private sector, for entrepreneurs to come into this market, to provide cheaper renewable energy, to replace the great expensive grid power in some way. So this is also an opportunity for Philippines. And I think the other countries, we can also try to see what are different opportunities. I may stop here. Thank you. Back to Jerry.
Thank you, Yunqing. There are more questions. I try to, yes, there's another question regarding the DC operation for the renewable energy, very technical. That's more like convert to the AC to the DC. Anyone want to respond to this question?
I'll just say I've been involved in other work with something called the Efficiency for Access Coalition, and they have been doing work on off-grid refrigeration, and that includes some that can switch from AC to DC, and that's being done. They even had a prize for refrigerator manufacturers. The problem is the big manufacturers don't think about the DC space, right? They're only thinking about AC. They have all the manufacturing volumes for AC. But when they see that there are almost 1 billion people in the world without access to electricity, then if you can provide them with visibility to that market, then there's a possibility. And many of those people are actually not without power, but they're under grid, right? The grid is available, but the intermittency is very bad. And having something that switches AC to DC would be very useful. It's under discussion, but that's Efficiency for Access is the program where I know they're working on that.
Thanks, Graham. I would like to give some information. I think in Shenzhen, there's one called DC Lab. They are doing some kind of pilot project together with the manufacturer, and I think the whole building, they try to build a DC system to demonstrate the possibility. Maybe Yunqing has visits there. No, maybe next time we can. It's from the Shenzhen. I could remember one institute. They are working on this and with some fund to build a whole building with all DC system. Okay, and let's see if we have missed any other question. I think study. Let's see, there's one. I think study is safety. Building safety can be applied in closed space in general. What note? The safety precaution can be recommended in case of air conditioning system use the transportation, mobility, bus and the trains. Okay. Yeah, that's more like cross sector from the building to the transportation, bus and the trains. Anyone and SK, I guess, come to you and if we or others.
Well, I can say a few words about this. Well, I want to thank Yong Ping for giving a very, very good summary of all these issues and challenges. He touched on business models for financing, the grid, and so on and so forth. I only would like to add that there's, of course, a big question about where you capture the solar. You need to use it as near as possible to where you capture that. That would be very good. If you can do that, it'd be excellent. Then, of course, there's provision for storage. Definitely important to have storage. Now, in this question about transportation in buses and trains, right now, air conditioning systems are driven out of these so-called engines of these locomotives. And for as long as these engines are there, even with hybrid system, they are taken care of. But the day would come when we want to rely on renewable to drive this transportation system like buses and trains. Then obviously they have to be designed and integrated into the entire power transmission system. So that's something which I have no knowledge of, but I guess it would be going way beyond just looking at AC and DC conversions. Okay, that's all I want to say about that. And I don't have any information about DC and AC conversion because this is a technical area which I'm sure a lot of research institutes and expertise out there working on this right now.
I have one question to David. Yeah, you're talking about, in fact, we face all the issues because when the oil price decrease and renewable energy, we need to compete other conventional energy carrier. And this is similar for the biofuel or bioenergy. And also you have the multiple value chain. So if you can highlight a little bit what's different compared to the biofuel value chain and compared to other energy carrier, including other renewable energy, like we mentioned about solar PV and other renewable energy power generation.
Yeah, if I may complement what Jim already said, on which I fully agree. I think that if we look just to the price of biofuels and we compare with oil, as Jim said, it will be a hard situation. But, and I can refer to Europe and the directive we have here as an example. It looks a bit different if you widen your perspective. And what I mean is that with biofuel, we actually impact on other directives and other targets which are global. I could mention easily India and the fact that biofuels are a priority for the Ministry of Oil and natural gas, for instance, because of import costs. But the point to me, the most relevant one, goes to the impact on other points like agriculture. I make a very simple example. In Europe, we do have the Renewable Energy Directive 2 that creates a framework for advanced biofuels only based on feedstock, not on the technology. And if we evaluate the value of the product only under this perspective, indeed, what Jim said is 100% true. I mean, it's very hard to compete. To take jet fuel cost versus conventional jet fuels cost, we're quite far away. But if I look from a different perspective, for instance, the Common Agricultural Policy asks for much more organic agriculture, because we must consider that we do have a problem of sustainability in agriculture. It's there. And the agricultural policy, and it's not just in Europe, it's a global issue, are trying to move this to more sustainable practice. Well, you want to go to more sustainable agriculture, you need organic fertilizer, organic amendments. This brings you to biomethane directly. The only way to provide sustainable organic fertilizer and amendments is through the biomethane route. So with the same technology, on one side, I can produce transport fuel because biomethane here in Europe is a transport fuel. And at the same time, I can supply the necessary material to fulfill another target, which is as well as important as the energy goals. And that is exactly, just a small example, what I'm trying to say. we have a world of opportunity if we look from a broader perspective. I could say the same for bioenergy. If you compare a kilowatt-hour price produced from photovoltaics and a kilowatt-hour price produced from bioenergy, probably we will lose this. But in the kilowatt-hour price from bioenergy, I do have a lot of income from the countries in terms of VAT, in terms of jobs, in terms of products that is flowing and being moved and so on. So the comparison, to be fair, should be enlarged and take into account this element. This is exactly our future works with Imperial College. We have already focused a couple of value chains, and we will try to dig into this to quantify the actual systematic economics of the system, not just compare the growth. So I'm a bit more positive in that sense, that if we inject financial resources post-COVID in the biofuel chain, with this view, not just on the cost of the ton of biofuels, with Jim is right. I mean, we know we will be more expensive. But if I take into account these other targets, that is a very good justification, and I see opportunities there.
Thank you, David. Oh, we have 4 minutes to the end of the session. There's one question to the Anish. How does he say the COVID-19 situation can be converted into the opportunity in Indian power sector? Anish?
Yeah, Anish here. The government has already mandated that renewable projects are must-run projects. So while thermal plants and gas plants have been backed down during the COVID crisis, solar, wind, and other renewable projects, subject to technical feasibility and grid stability, they are running to their fullest. Plus, 3 gigawatt of solar is under construction. That have also been allowed to be commissioned a little later because of the delay in importing of panels and other equipments, and because of non-mobilization of human resources at the sites. So I think that because of these leeways being given by the government and other incentives, the renewable projects should move forward, and they are financially they are well within their limits and quite viable compared to the coal generation and gas generation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have 3 minutes, and there's more questions coming.
3 minutes.
Jan, Jerry,
Yes.
Can I say something here? Can I ask a question to Yanish?
Yes, please.
I'm say if you're looking at the Indian power sector, it's going to be a rush going forward to bring back the economy that's lost, in a sense that it's the same with many developing world. I mean, economies, even China, and so on and so forth. So how does this present itself during this period? That is, the projects that are on hold and are now going to be restarted, and those that are started, they have been slowed down and going to pick up speed. What are the opportunities available? I would like to hear from the panel as to, is this COVID-19 situation going to allow us to rethink, reassess, recontract, or reimpose some of the tighter standards that would ensure safety into the future? Would that be the kind of models that are available to developing countries? So that's the question.
Maybe we can put this question to all of us to say just very few words as last. Please.
Yes, I suggest that to answer this question, every panelist give 1 sentence, 2 sentence statements, so that we can conclude more or less on time.
Yes, please.
So who will start? Graham?
Well, I would just suggest that we we see a multiple benefits situation, right? Where we can restart the economy, we can help employment, we can address the climate, we can address air quality if we invest in clean power projects, and that we have to put the effort in that, not just clean power, but clean energy more broadly. I'm speaking about power. So that's the big opportunity I see.
Thank you. Next.
If I may just add and repeat what I already said, it's a great opportunity ahead of us if we are able to have a wide perspective and combine all the different challenges and opportunities that we can merge together. I mean, a holistic and integrated view is the real difficulty to bring this to actual business activity and policies will be our challenge, I guess, for the future.
Okay. Jim?
I think David's right on target in terms of we really need to integrate these opportunities. And it is very challenging to do the analysis to understand how to best play these different technologies together. I would also just put in a plug that with bioenergy, even though they may initially be, or perhaps even in the long run, on par at best or slightly more cost effective, they will be creating local security, local job opportunities, and improving the local climate. So it's really a win that pays back to the individual country that in so many different ways. Thank you.
Okay. Anish?
Yes, I feel that we need to take a holistic view of renewables and other energy efficiency measures so that we can come up with a solution which is towards carbon emission reduction in carbon emissions and is also cost effective compared to the existing sources of energy. Thank you.
SK?
Well, I don't really have any answers. I appreciate the answers given by the others. I really don't know, because the Indian subcontinent in India is really a very huge country. I know of in the past there had been real difficulties, getting power to all the communities. And I guess one of those things that in Southeast Asia we're looking at is how do we secure our power? If we are unable to generate that, is to try and find it across the border, go as far as like Singapore. We're even looking at hydropower from Laos, for instance. So whether in India such opportunities are available where renewable can be developed in some states or provinces that can really go a distance to other cross borders to other states and provinces.
Okay. Sally?
Definitely the discussion has shown that COVID-19 has given us an opportunity to rethink through this pause that's come out of a calamity. And in rethinking, indeed, there's a need to consider all of the different options to maximize what's needed on the ground in the different countries, because the location matters. So we have to rethink and definitely reevaluate what we've been doing. And like I said, when I began this discussion, we have to reimagine tomorrow. And that includes renewable energy and other clean energy sources in order for us to meet the challenges that we face under COVID-19.
Thank you. So I give Yunping, maybe you can conclude. I will tell you next time. How about Sweden? we short of time. Yeah, please, Yunping, if you can conclude the session.
Yes, thank you, Jerry. You owe me an elaborated paper on my question, but not this time. I thank all the panelists, and I have to say hello to my colleague Kelly. I miss entirely your setting. What you said was in behalf of ADB, so I will not repeat what you have said already, but just inform our colleagues here at ADB, our sector, energy sector group, is preparing two things. One is a guidance note on how energy sector would contribute to support reopening of the economy. So this would answer partly what Professor Chu has asked. That's one work we're doing. And that will be a short note, a few pages, and just highlighting what needed to be implemented in the energy sector in light of this COVID impact and how we should respond to that. So this is one guidance note. The other one is a bigger working paper, and together with Professor Jerry Yan, we plan to see how we can make, you know, what you have been presented, but in a more elaborated way, maybe more scientific also for readers, so that we can compile a publication, hopefully, that will capture what you have said today. That's all from me. I will give the floor back to Jerry if anything, last things you want to mention. But I want to thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. Due to the time, we already 5 minutes over the what we can. And I would like to thank you, everyone, Kelly, David, Jim, SK, Anish, and Graham. And also you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And also the audience, we can all see them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.